You've seen The Wolf of Wall Street, right? That wild 3-hour ride of pure chaos and excess. But what if I told you that the craziest parts, the crashed helicopters, the sunken yachts, what if I told you those were actually true? Well, today, we're going to peel back the Hollywood gloss and see what was real and what was just movie magic in the story of Jordan Belfort's insane rise and fall. It's the one question everyone has after watching that movie. How much of that could possibly have happened for real? I mean, the lifestyle they show is so over the top, it feels completely made up. So let's dive in and fact-check some of the most outrageous moments to figure out where the movie ends and reality begins.
So, first things first, let's talk about the man at the center of it all. Was Jordan Belfort really the magnetic rock star leader that Leonardo DiCaprio played, or was that just part of a myth he built around himself?
Okay, so right off the bat, the basic building blocks of the movie are spot on. Jordan Belfort, a very real person. His company, Stratton Oakmont, totally real. And the crime that made him a millionaire, that pump and dump scheme, oh yeah, that was definitely real. So the foundation of the story is 100% true.
But what about his personality? Was he really that larger-than-life character? Well, what's kind of shocking is, yeah, pretty much. The real Belfort was known for being an incredibly charismatic mastermind, and according to his own book, that insane lifestyle we see on screen, the non-stop parties, the drugs, the crazy spending, that was all pretty close to his actual day-to-day reality. So, how in the world did he afford all this stuff? Well, it wasn't by making smart, legal trades. Nah, the whole empire was built on a scam. And if you understand how this scam worked, you pretty much understand the whole story. The whole engine for this fraud machine was something called penny stocks. Now, don't think of companies like Apple or Microsoft. We are talking about super cheap, super shady stocks in tiny little companies that were often completely worthless. They were the perfect thing to sell out of a high-pressure sales office, what they called a boiler room.
And here's the scam, broken down into 4 easy steps. First, Belfort's brokers would secretly buy a ton of some useless penny stock for next to nothing. Step 2 is the pump. They'd hit the phones and create this insane, misleading hype to drive the stock price through the roof. Then, and this is the most important part, the dump. Once the price was sky high, Belfort and his inner circle would sell off all their shares, making an absolute fortune. And finally, the collapse. The stock would crash back to nothing, and all their customers were left holding worthless paper. Simple, illegal, and just devastatingly effective.
All right, now let's get to the part everybody remembers, that absolutely bonkers lifestyle. Did any of those jaw-dropping moments really happen? Let's take a closer look at some of the wildest scenes from the film.
So the scene where his massive yacht sinks in a storm, you'd think, okay, that's got to be Hollywood just making things dramatic. But believe it or not, this one is completely true. The real Jordan Belfort had this huge 167-foot yacht, and he really did order the captain to sail into a massive storm, which caused it to sink off the coast of Italy. Just incredible.
And as if sinking a super yacht isn't crazy enough, this little detail is also 100% true. Belfort really did crash his personal helicopter right in his own front yard while he was high on Quaaludes. Seriously, you just can't make this stuff up.
Okay, but what about those infamous office parties? Specifically, the dwarf tossing? Well, this is where we get a bit of Hollywood exaggeration. The parties themselves were absolutely legendary, and that cult-like office culture was real. But according to the real-life Donnie, that specific event was probably invented for the movie to ramp up the shock value. And here's a great little piece of trivia for you. That iconic nickname, the Wolf of Wall Street, yeah, nobody ever called him that when he was actually working on Wall Street. It's a title he gave himself years later when he wrote the book the movie is based on. It was a genius piece of marketing, honestly. Well, a party like that can't last forever. Eventually, the law started to close in, which set up the big showdown between Jordan Belfort's empire and the FBI. Let's talk about the people who brought him down.
Of course, you can't talk about Belfort without talking about his unhinged, out-of-control right-hand man, Donnie Azoff. And yep, he was based on a very real person, a guy named Danny Porish, who was Belfort's actual business partner and second-in-command at the company. But on the other side of things, the FBI agent who's hunting him the whole movie, Patrick Denham, he actually wasn't a real person. He's what's called a composite character. The filmmakers basically took all the real agents and investigators who worked on the case and kind of merged them into this one guy to make the story flow better. So how did it all end?
Well, just like you see in the movie, Belfort decided to cooperate with the FBI. He ratted out pretty much everyone to get a lighter sentence, and he ended up serving 22 months in prison. And here's the final surreal twist. Get this. His cellmate was Tommy Chong. Yes, that Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong.
All right, finally, there's something really, really important you have to understand about this movie, and that's the lens it's told through. The perspective of the film is a huge reason why it's so powerful, but also why it's so controversial. And this might be the single biggest thing to remember. This entire story comes from Jordan Belfort's own book. That makes him the classic definition of an unreliable narrator. I mean, think about it. We're not just seeing what happened. We're seeing his version of what happened. A version told by a guy who has every reason in the world to make himself look like a legend.
And that leads directly to the film's biggest criticism. Because we're stuck inside Belfort's head, we get to see all the fun, the parties, the thrill of the scam, but we almost never see the other side of the coin. We don't see the thousands of normal people who lost their retirement savings, their kids' college funds, their entire financial futures, all because of the lies they were told over the phone.
Which kind of leaves us with a tough question to chew on. As a movie, The Wolf of Wall Street is brilliant. It's masterfully made and incredibly entertaining. But by telling the story only from the wolf's perspective, does it accidentally end up glorifying a man who ruined countless lives? It really makes you wonder, when does telling a great story come at the expense of telling the whole truth?